Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. Hi, I'm Andrew LeBlanc. I'm the communications manager at Palatine Library District, and I am the current ILA Marketing Forum manager. So welcome back, everyone. Last month, we had our first part of this roundtable about annual reports. We talked about how we gathered information and how we put that together. And this second part for our roundtable, we're going to talk about the design process and the tips and tricks that people have done to get all that information put into a nice design. We're going to hear from three speakers today. Our first, we're going to hear from Chad Camello. He is the Marketing and Engagement Manager at Morton Grove Public Library. Then we'll hear from Denise Raleigh. She's the Division Chief, Public Relations and Development at Gail Borden Public Library District. And then at the end, we'll hear from Jody Colo. She is Director of Communications at the Oak Park Public Library. If you haven't had a chance to view some of these reports, we're going to put some links in the chat. So as you have time, you can look at those. I'm really excited to hear about this second part of the roundtable, to hear about their design process. I think it's really a challenge to take all that information that we've gathered and then kind of distill it down and put it into a really nice piece that is effective and meaningful to our users. So like Tamara said, we please ask you to hold your questions until the end, and then we'll have a Q&A at that time. So go ahead, Chad, start us off.
Hello. So I was actually initially I planned to bring in the graphic designer at Morton Grove Library to talk about this portion because she's the one who does most of this side, but unfortunately she's out sick today. So she did send me some notes based on the things that we wanted to cover today. So I'll pull from those to get some insight from her side of things. So I'll actually be talking about the monthly reports that we do. We don't have a kind of traditional annual report that we'll hear about from the other libraries, but in terms of the monthly reports that we do, last year, pretty soon after COVID started, we started creating a sort of graphical summary of the monthly reports to include with the board packets. And that's most of what I'll be talking about right now. So Karina says that she collects different stats and data from two different stats documents. So a lot of it stays the same every month in terms of checkouts, program attendance, number of card holders, and things like that. And then depending on the space, which is it's just one letter size page that she uses for this, she'll include or exclude some other categories as well. So, and I'll do a screen share shortly to show examples of this, what it starts to look like. But she also reads through the different departmental reports, the monthly reports, and sees any big events or new services, projects, things that she can highlight that might be of note to include as well. And then also patron comments are nice. We have a generic template for those that we will also use in social media, but those can also be put in there. It can be used either as filler, if there's not as much going on, or if there's just a nice comment we want the board to see. That's always a nice place to do that as well. And she designs around how much information she has to work with. And so layout will just depend on how everything can be grouped together in the space allowed. And then she tries to use the same icons and branded logos consistently as applicable. So icons come from Icons 8, the service that we have a subscription to. And then any changes to those or custom graphics, she'll use Illustrator. And then the layout of the graphic is done in InDesign. So that's how it comes together there. So in terms of the evolution of it, let me do a screen share here so we can see some examples. Okay, so I just got a folder of last year. So it initially started, let's see, so it's May 2020. This is pretty soon after we started doing it. This is an example of wanting to highlight the increase in digital content at the time, which I think a lot of libraries were experiencing. So that was kind of the main pull out from here. So comparing stats from even just the month, a couple months before COVID to soon after it, the big jump in Canopy, Access 360, and Hoopla, showing that was one of the kind of the main focus of this one. And then see the July 2020 banner featured this, the welcome back once we did reopen for the first time. So, and just kind of reflecting things that had changed, both for curbside pickups and then also in-person things that were happening there. So you can see another example of this layout. So September looked at the introduction of our Library of Things and a couple other new programs. So you can see just kind of the big featured banner of the newest thing that happened there, along with a patron comment here. And then you'll see some of the same sort of stats popping up. The layout kind of change here and there, again, just depending on the space and what is there, but some things do remain consistent. And then she also wanted to highlight, so April 2021, just pulling out some of a program for our adult services and youth services with the logos, our Tomato Club, and then our STEMinate stand. I just wanted to talk about what we had been doing there and some new things that have been happening there. So, so those are a couple of examples that you see. She also, in terms of lessons learned and tips to share, she said, don't make it too busy. She's really simplified the design over time to make it easier to read. So comparing, say, I think the first, here, the first one was April 2020. And you'll see the big colorful boxes for all the different content and the colorful background, which is kind of the first iteration. And then same thing with May 2020. Still got the colorful background, a little bit less of the colorful boxes there. And then comparing to one of the more recent ones, just pull out June, see what's on there. So it's a little simpler. So, not quite as much pizzazz, and again, it does change every month. So, she can, she just uses her creativity every month to see what it can look like, which is great. It's always fun to see what she sends every month. So, but it'll just depend on the designer and what needs you have. But just keeping it simple, I think, makes it a little easier. And then she also recommends to play with text size. So make the stats you want to stand out bigger and bolder. Pretty obvious, you would say, but you have to kind of make decisions based on what you want to emphasize, and then use the design to make that happen. So she also says you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So she has a few kind of go-to layouts that work, and she rotates through them depending on the amount of information. And then just using the same icons and having just a few color palette with a few colors that work together just makes it easier. So if it is more of a time crunch, because ours is on a monthly basis, and having the deadline of getting it sent to the board by the time of their meeting in the second week of the month, just not adding more work than is needed for it. So yeah, it tends to just be mostly graphics and text. We haven't really branched out into photos or images yet. I think a lot of it is because just we're limiting it to one page. Obviously, for annual reports or things that we want to expand more, I think there'd be more room for that. And then the monthly reports from the department heads will have images as well. But for these, we just mostly, stick to graphics. So yeah, I'll go ahead and stop that there. Pretty sure that's all that she had sent to me there. But again, these so far have just been sent to the board every month or included in their packets. They haven't been publicized. I don't think, there's nothing that's not available to the public, or isn't anything that's inappropriate that we wouldn't share with the public, and in most of them. So I think it's something I'd like to start doing. But as of right now, these do just go to the board. So yeah, those are our couple of examples of the monthly graphics that we have.
Okay, then. Thanks, Chad. We can go ahead and hear from Denise.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having us and inviting Gail Borden. This was going to be Laura Espinoza, our graphics supervisor, but she was unable to make it, but she covered for me last time. So that's wonderful. And I see Liz Clemens is still on there. So if any questions arise, she's a big part of our annual report and putting it together. But as to the design side of things, again, we work through this every year as to what to include. Like the major one that we work with is for our public. And so we're always trying to reach them with this. So we really lean hard on images and large graphics. But our audience is everyone. Ours mainly goes through e-formats. We use something called Yumpu, and I think I looked it up yesterday. It's about $240 a year. We used to use Issuu, ISSUU. We were finding they had a little bit, we were probably not happy with as many ads as were showing up, so we switched over to Yumpu. And the way we actually distribute it is through through our electronic news. And our electronic news used to go, oh, can you repeat that name in the chat? The chat. Yumpu, I'm gonna right there. It's, and after I will send this to Tamara and she can send that out with everyone when we make this available to all. But we found that works for us. But our electronic news goes to, I think we have we're upwards of 40,000 that we mail to, and sometimes we get as high as an 18% open. So that's really an effective way to reach people. During COVID, of course, we sent it much more often than we did. We used to be twice a month, and now we're weekly. We've been weekly for a while, but that's our main distribution point. Of course, we also print ours. And so I'll get to our format. Our design tools we use InDesign, and I'm going to share my screen and show you that we use Adobe Acrobat Pro for the linking. And of course you can link in InDesign, but we actually need ours to be printable. So let me, are you all seeing that?
No.
No, we don't see it.
All right, am I sharing it now?
Yes.
Okay, so what we really try and go for is larger graphics, and we really pull the big words out, big words up. Again, if someone doesn't have much time to spend with it, we really want them to take away a few things. Our Yumpu formatted annual report was, I think we looked at, it's almost 5,000 people that have seen it. We also give this out in a printed form to our board. And we also use these for our partners that would like something from us. Again, it's not fancy. This is an in-house piece that we run, but it's been pretty effective. And we also use it for grants. So it's also for those of you who write a lot of grants, when you can hook to something as part of your attachment instead of having to include it as words, there's always an additional opportunity to tell your story without hitting your word counts. And I'll just ours, we set up in a 24-page InDesign, and she will take away and add pages, but that's how she lays out in a 24. And we're really trying to talk to our customers about what we do for them. And then again, everyone is our audience for this, but we are really trying to let them know what impact that we have done, what role the library plays in the community. We're really trying to emphasize a central role that we play and being trusted. We were just so happy. We ran the census. We had up, this is our second 10 years that we've headed this up. and just making sure that they understand that how we ran the census, and we just got census numbers, and realize because the library is such a trusted force and we have so many partners, that is why we've been asked twice to run, to head up the census campaign. But that's, again, we just want to reemphasize our trustworthiness, that we're here for you, and especially in this time of COVID. So I probably should have mentioned this at the beginning. I'm going to flip back real quick. But we theme, and normally Liz will look at the year, and sometimes it's based on, we had the big Cubs Sox exhibit, and that will be what we theme when we had, and we did have the Cubs trophy go through. But this is mainly a COVID impact annual report from last year. And as Chad was just saying, the virtual programs were phenomenal. And, we were just so happy to keep so many of our people with us. We did try Adobe Spark, and we think that it looks wonderful. Our problem with that is we had so many people that requested our printed version. I should also mention that our printed version, we put into our Ask folders. We are efficiently funded library, and for a lot of the extras we bring in, like most of our large exhibits, when both of our branches came in on major donations. So we have big Ask folders, which normally our annual report will go in that as well. So when we are making a pitch for, don't you want to underwrite that meeting room, or or a shelf, or whatever it is, or brick. But we normally, once I get to a certain level of ask, we will definitely put these in those, and that's part of telling the library story. So of course we emphasize the big numbers, which if we do have to include something that's rather negative, it does not get, we're really not highlighting that much. Again, for our community, where we are over 25% of our people are foreign born, we have over 45% of our people during the census would indicate that they are Hispanic in nature, their culture, either or they speak Spanish or they identify as Hispanic. Pictures are so important in telling that story. We have discussed, we do have a Spanish part of our newsletter. I do think we probably will start adding Spanish to our annual report as well. That because it's such a critical part of our community. And so we want to make sure that people don't have barriers to hearing from the library. However, it does talk to, short, I think Chad mentioned it, short, simple. We do, try and leave white space when we can, and really let pictures do it, and infographics. Again, when you're talking about language barriers and that kind of thing, it's really important that a picture tell a story. We hook up everything that's in here. Like if people want to spend a lot of time with the elements that are in here, there are lots of videos that get made during the year that we just save, pictures as we walk, when people in other departments, but people from our division, as you're walking around, take your picture and keep your folder, because you're going to need it someday. And we put these impactful pictures in our newsletter on a regular basis. I am going to quit sharing as well. So, and I'll just talk a little bit about lessons learned. Again, I think the digital nature of our annual report lets us look at whether people are interacting with it. And that's always important. And that's a real plus for having a digital version, is to see if you land it very often. But we need ours printable. That's why we use Adobe Acrobat and InDesign. Let's see. our process for finalizing this is Liz, that's on this call right now, or it's on our presentation. She does the first draft. We ask all of our division chiefs to pick your highlights with the community in mind. You know, like we have a large, as Laura talked last time, we have a large, much larger annual report that we submit early in the year, and you and division chiefs are welcome to, and that's the history, and they can put anything they would like in that. For this one that's going to the public, as we're trying to reach folks and we realize how busy everyone is we really are trying to go with the motto, you know, what does what we do matter to them? You know, what difference have we made in their community and their lives? So we try it. So we ask the division chiefs one more time to follow that. And they take their own first annual report, cut that down. That goes to Liz, who cuts it down even further with, again, that eye toward, you know, what matters to them. And I'm always surprised at how long this still remains. We try and shorten it as much as possible. But then it goes through many edits, and the division, it goes to Carol, and then it gets then it gets posted in a number. You know, we'll post this through the e-news. The print format goes to a number of different places, and and then we will put it out on social media. And again, you can watch it, and we'll do that more than once during the year. The outcome question I thought was very thoughtful, in that we always, just like Chad was saying on the monthly report, is like we're always trying to let people know that we're here first, the visibility, but also that, you know, we're a trusted place, and that we're fundamental to your community. So we're always trying to land the library message. So that's what this is all about. And it's a nice time to relook at the last year. But we passed a referendum. I think it's 62%. And I want to thank the other libraries that we leaned on to get information about referendum. But that's in the middle of COVID, that was, or at the beginning of COVID, it was very reaffirming that perhaps there's a thought there that the message has landed a few times. So we were very gratified. So that's one of the ways we measure this. It's, you know, we always, our library district is 140 years old. We always want to say, like, what happened during our time period when we were at the communication wheel. So, you know, that's very nice that we're going to help provide a sustainability framework for Gilboarden going on. Tips to share, just like Chad and his graphic designer said, Laura and Liz and all of us would agree, is simple, white space, get it read. And what we will be doing is probably either looking at some kind of translations, or really adding some Spanish, more Spanish text to this, as we do for our bi-monthly newsletter. And I think that's what I've gotten. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Denise. That was a lot of good information. We really appreciate it. All right, and now next is Jody.
Thank you, Andrea. I am hoping to share my screen as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start that. Open this up. Can everyone see?
Yep, looks good.
Thanks. Okay, great. Let me make sure I've got the full view here. I have just some slides here to walk us all through. I think Andrea mentioned that they would put the link to the actual, what we call a year in review, in the chat box. So take a peek. Little bit about our library, and I'm happy to share this presentation when you're done, or when we're all done as well. And a little bit about our year in review. We I've used Spark the last 3 years, and our goal is really to continue to inform the community on the progress we're making on our strategic plan. We're lucky in that we have a lot of structure in terms of how to narrow down the information, in that we have 4 strategic priorities: engagement, learning, and stewardship. A 4th was added for this calendar year, anti-racism. And we kind of use that as the framework of the funnel for how we're going to gather information to include throughout the year. Our goal, in addition to sharing information and why or how we impact residents in the community, is to tell a visual story. And we also have developed significantly, and maybe I should share this as well, the data that's available on a real-time basis through our website. So I'm going to click over to a section called Evaluating Our Impact. And what that does is kind of show what we're pulling from the numbers side in a real-time, it's updated monthly, I believe, perspective. So as a result, a lot of the information that's here is not in what we call our annual report. Kind of flipping back, you'll see that it's lots of pictures, lots of white space, and fewer words. Going back to, let's see. I took the questions that were submitted and I thought, well, I'll just answer them straight out. I know in part 1 of this presentation, we kind of took a more comprehensive approach to talking about the report, but I'm just going to go through, flip through and say, one of the questions was, who do you consider to be the audience, or who do you define? And of course, it's everyone, right? But it's even more specifically people who we consider community stakeholders, and very often people who have words of critique or criticism related to how we spend money, how we're not spending money, or are still kind of even not fully convinced about the library's value in the, in today's modern age. So who we find reads our annual report, and this is anecdotally, we don't do any surveys or any particular follow-up. So I'm basing it on open rate information based on who we send, as well as feedback that we get. Add staff and patrons to the list, patrons who love the library, patrons who you see quite often. And I think sometimes we get I wrote some nice surprises, but we get some nice comments back, and that's always cool to hear back. I just listed some views in there, online views that spark. I don't think those are unique. I think they're total. Surprised to see that we've repurposed that content in different ways this year. And I think that when I look at the numbers, it's probably worth the effort, because we're, not fully through the year. We have more views on this last report than we did the year prior. The next question was, what do you use for design? Like I think others have mentioned here, the Adobe Suite. And we also, as an organization, use G Suite for sharing documents, and we use Basecamp for project management. So G Suite comes as the business edition, as it's not free, but it is something that the whole organization uses. And Basecamp also has various levels of pricing if you're looking to test it out or start out. But I know there's a lot of project management tools out there now that are cloud-based. The next question was, what's the process? We talked about this a little in the last presentation. The bulk of this is really done in January. And I would say, there's some thinking, there's some talking, some sharing prior, but January and February kind of touching things up is how that's working. We try to be very collaborative. We try to work with the framework, as I mentioned, that's already defined by our strategic plan. And we try to make sure that when we put all this effort into creating this content, that we repurpose it in different ways, whether it becomes a social media campaign, whether it becomes the link from some of the home pages on the social media, Facebook and a link in the bio, in the footer of all the emails we send out. We try to think like, how can we drive people to it, not just that one time, but on a consistent basis to, again, give kind of a visual storytelling perspective of who we are and what we do and how that matters in the community. There were questions about distribution, format, and what are the goals? And so I answered those on this slide here. We have never had a request for a printed book, and I don't know why, but we haven't. So that's why we stick with Spark. But we do mail with the Village as an insert in the Village newsletter to all residents and businesses, kind of a summary of what's going on with the URL to all households. So we have that as a kind of a backup, but that doesn't, it's not a straight one-to-one, like they're not exactly the same, you know, the information shared in the format used. And then evaluation, in terms of evaluating our distribution, we look at, you know, how many clicks, and I think I had put that on the previous slides, are around 3,500 for this year. Lessons and tips, I think I heard these from both our other presenters. Coming up with a theme for the year really helps us package the information. These are the 3 themes that we've used over the last 3 years when using Spark. And I'm really a big fan, like I mentioned, of the visual storytelling, because we're able to balance a lot of the work that our manager for data analytics does on the numbers side with the photos that are helping tell the story with fewer words. My other tip was to take, you know, critics maybe within your own organization or even out in the community with a grain of salt. Some of these reports, you know, their shelf life is a year, right? But the actual shelf life in quotes could be at your point of distribution. So we haven't had a lot of criticism that I would consider negative, other than, believe it or not, we do print well, we stopped in COVID during the pandemic, but we do print a quarterly magazine. And there was a little bit of thought and criticism of not doing that during the pandemic, not only because of the life cycle of creating a quarterly magazine was too spread out, but because of criticism that we don't need to spend that money on a print piece. And it's perception, it's not reality in terms of the dollars. Balance, how do you get balance and where you publish? Those were other questions. I promise I don't work for Adobe, but there's information about using Spark if you want to check it out. We also kind of have been sharing internally amongst ourselves the show me, don't tell me. Thinking when it comes to taking photos, asking others for photos, asking others, we have a form on our website where we'll tie to certain promotions where we encourage patrons, staff, everybody to share their photos or share their videos or share what they've captured. That with that particular form has a disclaimer that says, by submitting this, you're giving the library permission to repurpose and reshare. And so that's worked out to be a really great time saver for us in terms of engagement, but also having really cool stuff that we don't have to generate all ourselves. So I think that was it. And if you have any questions, again, I know this presentation is probably shared it can be shared in the chat, but I will stop sharing my screen and take it from there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jody. That was great. Lots of good information again. There's a couple questions from the beginning from Chad's presentation. I'm gonna just ask those. I think, Chad, you talked about it was just being shown to the board on a monthly basis. Do you have plans to compile these into an annual type presentation?
So we did. So last year we had, I guess, April through the end of the year. We did use all of those in our newsletter, our regular bi-monthly newsletter, as it wasn't for its own report, but we did include a sort of end of year or annual review, whichever issue that was. So it was helpful there where we already had all the stats and stuff that we wanted to feature. I think this year, now that we've had more than a full year's worth, I do want to have an official sort of annual report. What that looks like remains to be determined. Whether I think either the Adobe Spark model or Microsoft Sway, I think is another option, or just a kind of a standard PDF. I don't know if we'd actually do a printed publication or not. We'll have to determine that. But yeah, I would like to have an actually intentional annual presentation.
Yeah, great. Those and the infographics are really nice and clean. I could see cutting them up and using bits and pieces in social too. So
Right.
yeah. And then let's see, there's another question. You use the language viewers versus attendees or attendance in June 2021 report. Does this mean all your programs in that month were virtual or that you were highlighting only virtual?
So I looked at that one. I think that might be a mistake. Not all of our programs were virtual. We were doing in person. That was only 2 months ago. So I think that might be just a holdover from when we were just doing virtual programs. So I'll have to let Karina know about that, just to make sure that that's accurate, because the stats that we compile now do include both in person and virtual. So we'll just have to update the language to reflect that.
Right. I know that was a challenge too for us to try and decide how to count those numbers of, YouTube views and things like that.
Right.
Anyhow, okay, great. All right, I don't see any other questions in the chat, but feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question, or you can put something in the chat.
I do just want to say too, we for our newsletters, again, it's every 2 months we have them. We use the Internet Archive as a place to upload them. It's free. There's no ads. It's a nonprofit, I guess. So to me, I like that better than the other options like the Issue, or I know there's a few out there. Just because of that, it is a little quirkier, but it's a great option just for the cost, number one. But it does have, it's sort of the however you call it, you can kind of flip through the issue and embed it on pages. And, so we use that for our newsletter, and then for the STEMinate Stand projects, we've started using that as well. So if that's if anyone's looking for a place to host their digital newsletter, or just a place to have any sort of documents, that's worked out for us so far.
Okay, great. All right, open up the floor. Who has a question for any of the speakers? Let's see. I know I had something, Denise, when I was thinking about when you were talking about the editing process and how all the your division chiefs get to look at those pages. How is that? How does that go? I could see that you'd probably want to edit maybe more just to keep it tight, but it's all really good information. How and that seems like maybe that could take a long time, or you keep it like, no, you got to look at this and I need it back right away.
Laura talked about it last time, and we have 2 different annual reports, and there's that annual report that goes to the board that you can go on, and it's very much a historical document, a reflection of what happened that year in all the divisions. And what we ask the division chiefs to do is to really take a hard look at what they submitted and say, and again, at different divisions, this lands unequally. And we recognize that at the start, that it's not going to be handled equally, because we are trying to reach people, and maybe more so with this one, since we knew we had a referendum up. We really want it to be based on what impact we had on people in the community. So we really focused on that. So I praise Liz, who's on this meeting again, for her taking that first chop. And then everyone, then it doesn't go back to the division chiefs, as it were. Sometimes if we have more time, we will, but that, Andrea, as you're pointing out, that becomes a very elongated process. So because we're the communications arm, and we make that decision all the time as to what the people in the community need to know and how they need to know it, that's why this year it probably just went to our executive director, and she, heads up every, Carol Meadow, excellent director, who she looked at hard look, and we really, she works with all the division chiefs, and that's where a lot of the final decisions were made by her. Again, what a challenging year. So everybody, clap to everyone and in libraries for what we achieved, serving these communities during this, and being true to our staff and keeping our staff safe, and what goes to the public. All of you are all dealing with that. Like, what do you put out to them? What does it just staff only? It's been a wonderful and very challenging time to be a communicator, I think. So it doesn't go back. This particular one did not go back to division chiefs this year. It went only to Carol.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, gotcha. And yeah, you make a good point. If there's any time to brag about all that libraries did, now is the time to brag how we handled this past year. Okay, so there's some more questions about, I think I saw something about Adobe Spark. I'm curious about using Adobe Spark URL. Have you considered using a vanity URL or a landing page on your website? So Jody, maybe you can say more about that.
Sure, absolutely. We never use the Spark URL. I just put it in this presentation. We either link directly, or we use a vanity URL, or I linked our about page where we have language, and we link, we call it the year in review. So agreed, using a Spark URL directly would be weird. But it is what shows up, when you click. Have we ever taken it further than that and tried to mask that URL in another way? We haven't. I hope that helps.
So just to follow up on that, so you don't have a print version, and so you just direct that to in your e-news. How do people find out about? I think you probably said something, but no, I don't recall what you said.
I probably blew over it. Yeah, we do it all the ways. In fact, that's something I think that we tried to think a little more deliberately and intentionally about this year. We have definitely use our collection of patron and other subscriber emails. We've got a list of about 30,000, and we'll do a unique blast on that. And then we'll also include it in as either a small link or a news item, and 7 other additional emails that we send to different targeted groups or segmented groups. So we've got like people who are just tried and true bread and butter readers. We have kids and families. We have people who are using tech. So it's getting out, to everyone as one thing. Then it's getting mentioned in all these other emails. We do social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We use imagery from the digital report on the homepage or whatever you call it, your landing page for Facebook, and in the bio in Instagram and Twitter. We put it in the footer. In addition to featuring it in the emails, we put it in the footer of all the emails. So if you wanted to see ours, contact us, year in review. So I feel like thinking creatively about how you can integrate it into all communication digital throughout the year as a part of explaining your brand or your identity is a way that we're using it that we hadn't, in previous years. And the thing that makes that easy is the high visual nature of it.
Right, and all of your examples definitely was clear that pictures and graphics and big numbers really stand out. And I'm a big skimmer, so I can't imagine that people are really want to read along. Like Denise, I think you guys had the dirty report. That would be not a good idea to send out to the public. So does anyone else have any comments, questions about design related to these annual reports, monthly reports? Karen and Barrington shared their link as well. You guys can check that out. I know I'm feeling like this is great work, and how in the world could I fit some of this in to just regular work? But I can see that if you build the process and just build it into your workflow. Anybody have any comments about, like, was that really a hard growing pain, Denise? I think you guys have been doing yours quite a long time. Maybe you as well, Jody.
Yeah, I Denise, if you want to go ahead, I don't know. I would say that the first year you do anything, it's hard, and then when you figure out how to do a save as, and you have experimented with what works and what doesn't work, the second one's easy. The third one is a breeze. And so that's been our experience. Is Spark is a drag and drop tool, and it's a cloud-based tool. So we had multiple people working on it. And we were like, oh, we know that we have to shoot imagery to fit this space. You know, we won't do it after the fact. That was another thing I meant to mention and I forgot, was that because it's such a visual thing, we could proactively define, like, where are the few chances that we do want to hire a professional photographer, just versus using our own cell phone stuff. And you know, investing a little bit in that went a long way for us. So.
And Andrea, I think it's just a process. It's a learning process. Every year we do something different. And it really is. It's learning to keep all that stuff in one space, and stuff that you've already made. Anything, like, we want ours to be an active document. We want it to come alive. You want to watch video, there's tons of video links in there. You just want to see infographics, there's that. We have the Flickr page if you just want to see an album of photos from something. And it really is helpful to just bear that in mind, as save, note to self, or put it in a file that we have that. And like a few years past, I know we have struggled with images, and we're getting better at recognizing, go down, and we'll just spend a day where we send someone around, like, do we have enough volunteer pictures? Someone please just go and do has anyone visited the branches recently? It's remembering that these are coming up, and so and we've modified our timelines as well, as it makes more sense, because we found we were going a little late in the early years because of all the back and forth, and that's what became the long, put every historical piece you want in there versus the short that's going to the community. Is we realize how much time, and we want to be part of that communication. We always talk about being relevant. So when people are looking for their year end of review, there's a marketing, people are spending millions and millions out there, and we want to be part of that flow. So to make ours move up in time so that we weren't an afterthought, that we were part of things, we had to move some of our timeline up, and we still struggle occasionally depending on where we are in COVID. But hopefully next year, please, we will be in a different place. But it's really just paying attention, and again, it helps. The more you do it, the more you're going to realize where to save things. Make sure that you and again, you get stuck with a fall picture when you didn't want a fall picture. Is just remembering what stories that you want to tell, and making sure we have the imagery that goes with it. And that's an ongoing process, not just in November, where we normally start ours.
Yeah, right. It's good tip there. Kind of plan ahead, got to forecast. Yeah. Some other question from Jill at Grace Lake: is everyone using data from July to June, or is it calendar year? So that's a good question.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
As we look at this, we think of that other piece as a straight history piece. We use our fiscal year. For this one, our fiscal years are different than those people. We're really trying to connect with community and thinking how they think. So are we stringent on the marketing piece? No. We kind of let you know this is what it was, but we are really don't. For the marketing piece, we're telling you where it is not we think of it more of a communication piece and a storytelling piece rather than a data. And that's the way we look at ours, because we do have that data that's, and I think I shared the other long one. That one it's got we have the displays that come out every month. So there's actually a very different aspect to the long one, which is very much buttressed by our year. But in reality, we try and, again, our audience is our community member. We know, we look at who we serve, we know who comes in our doors, and we try to think like, what do they care about? And are they going to say, well, your fiscal year is different than our calendar year? I think they just want us to tell a story. And so we may, if we feel like it's worth mentioning, that something that happened in, just a few weeks ago, but it just happened in this annual report, we go ahead and include it. We don't have hard and fast, you can't include this for the shorter annual report. We do on the longer, goes to the board. The board gets this one as well, but we don't have the same framework for it. We look at it differently. We consider it differently.
Okay, that helps. Jody says she agrees. Storytelling over reporting. So anybody else have any questions, thoughts? I have a couple things if nobody else has anything. I'm just thinking about, we have a variety of sizes of libraries here represented by people attending, and especially Denise and Jody, you guys are big libraries. What would be the tip, or Chad, you can chime in, what would be the tip for somebody who's a smaller library that, again, like doesn't have a ton of time to prepare? What like big things would you make sure you hit?
I guess I would think less is more and look back at your mission and vision and make sure if someone asked you, well, how do you fill in your mission and vision, that your report answers that. Maybe your report is a letter from your director and some key graphics like Chad shared, they were great. They're icons. I know every community is different, right? And what they want and what they need, and every staff is different, what they think is important. But I would just ask people, what do you need? And design from there versus trying to do what somebody else does. I think it's so important to consider your own. Every library is unique, right? Every community is unique. So what does your library need the most? And just focus on that.
Yeah, I'd say if you're starting from nothing like we were last year, just doing the monthly reports is a good first step. That's what we're in the midst of. Limit yourself to one page like we did. You already have the stats and stuff from the department report, so it's half the work is already done. So if you have in-house graphic design like we do, it makes it even better. I think it's because it is limited, though. It is more of the reporting versus storytelling. There's not a lot of storytelling you can do in that space, but I think it's definitely a good first step in that direction.
Okay. All right, everybody. Anyone else? This has been a good, let's see. Oh, we're almost at an hour. Oh, let me wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for speaking. We really appreciate everything you've shared with us. And I know that I'm definitely inspired, and I hope everybody here has been inspired by what you guys have shared. Just a couple reminders from ILA Marketing Forum. Next month for September, we're going to be talking about file sharing and storage. So I think we talked about this as a group, thought over this past year, everybody's been working from home, and now we're trying to kind of, where are all these documents? How are we talking to each other? I know I feel that tension here where I work. So I'd like to see what some good suggestions are. So John Neuer from Illinois Heartland Library System, he's the web and IT administrator. He's going to talk about that, as well as Nicole Zimmerman from Rails. I believe that she's the marketing coordinator there as well. And I'm sure you'll see some registration information coming from ILA e-news that Tamara sends out So be looking for that. And then in October, our forum, we're going to host a networking event at the conference. That'll be Tuesday, October 12th from 4:15 to 5:15. So at the end of the day, if you've still got some energy left, come and join us, and we'll just chat about, what ideas we'd like to see discussed in our roundtables, and you can get to know a little bit more of the forum members at that meeting. So we'd love for you to join us there if you're going to the ILA conference. So again, thank you all for attending, and really hope to see you in September. Thanks.